on Asia and the Pacific, and I'm going to start by recognizing myself and the ranking member to present our opening statements. Without objection, the members of the subcommittee can present brief remarks if they choose to, or they can submit them for the record. And now I'm going to yield myself as much time as I may consume to present my opening remarks. We can hardly discuss any major foreign policy issue without China coming up. Indeed, questions about China are on the top of everyone's minds. How stable is the Communist Party regime? How does China's land reclamation in South China Sea affect prospects for peace or conflict? How can we deter China from hacking into our networks and stealing vital national security and economic information? Does China's activity reflect its growing global ambition, or is it driven by domestic concerns for stability and security? What are the consequences of a slowdown of the Chinese economic machine on the U.S. economy? China is at a crossroads. Its quest for development and global influence has come at a high cost of alienating partners and allies alike. There are cracks in the foundation, and imbalances remain politically, economically, and militarily. China cannot forsake and undermine the same international order that has helped incubate its rise to prominence. It cannot forget the agreements that it should honor, nor the spirit in which they were made. I look forward to discussing these issues as I welcome our distinguished witnesses who traveled from as far as New York and Hong Kong to be here today. China has become a global economic powerhouse since it opened up in '78. China's military operations and expenditures, vast manufacturing, as well as regional investment and global infrastructure projects reflect this well. But the IMF projects China's annual GDP growth to slow down to about 5.9% over the next 6 years. Experts attribute the slowdown to factors such as demographic changes, the coddling of state-owned enterprises, a weak banking system, government corruption, and inadequate adherence to rule of law. Major demographic challenges are forcing changes to China's long-term economic planning, including the legacy of its one-child policy and increasing wealth gaps. The working class is simultaneously shrinking and demanding higher wages. Large debt loads throughout municipalities and provinces across the country mean that reckless infrastructure buildup is no longer viable for boosting GDP growth. The instruments that China used to finance its rise are no longer a reliable option for maintaining its position as a great economic power. Innovation and access to information are major contributors to economic growth, but these drivers have been stifled because of China's desire to control information to protect domestic stability, leaving China in a development dilemma. These issues cannot be addressed when people cannot express ideas freely and benefit from their hard work. China can only throw so much money to try to foster intangible skills that contribute to an innovation society. Instead, China resorts to stealing other nations' intellectual property, blatantly disregarding international norms while stubbornly denying any malicious activity in cyberspace. Domestic drivers of protecting the governing power of the Chinese Communist Party, continued economic growth, and military modernization override its desire to curtail or halt such activity. China's cyber activity cannot persist without repercussions. Yet the high payoff for this behavior and, frankly, our inability to devise proper responses exacerbate the issue. Over the past 25 years, China's made great strides in military modernization, including a sustained 9.5% annual increase in military spending over the past decade. While it lacks combat experience and power projection capabilities, the People's Liberation Army attempts to address these shortcomings by conducting more non-combat operations overseas, participating in more international exercises, notably with Russia, and enhancing its ability to dominate territory in or around its waters. China's island-building activities contradict decades of international agreements in this arena and raise concerns and questions over its supposed peaceful rise. Under Xi Jinping's leadership, punishment and detention for the exercise of free speech and assembly has been increasing. The government not only strictly controls the internet and limits people's political and social rights, it also pursues and limits people's pursues efforts to forcibly assimilate ethnic and religious minorities, such as the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Legislation such as the Foreign NGOs Administration Law also put at risk our NGOs' ability to operate in China. Promotion of human rights and protection of personal freedoms should continue to be an important aspect of our China policy. Under Xi Jinping's leadership, the world has seen a China that is both more internally restrictive and more internationally assertive. His predecessor, Deng Xiaoping, encouraged a low profile for China on the world stage, saying, "Taoguang Yanghui." Under Xi Jinping, however, China has embraced a higher international profile, changing its foreign affairs slogan to "striving for achievements," or "Fenfa Youwei." I've had the privilege to travel to China more than 40 times, and I've had the honor to get to know many thoughtful, inspiring, innovative, and successful Chinese people. If I've learned anything from my years my years of engagement with China, there's no one way to characterize a country that is so full of wonder and full of contradictions, full of frustration, yet full of potential. As the United States prepares for Xi Jinping's visit on September 1st, I urge our government to welcome China's active role in the world, but we must also temper China's impatience and assertiveness with expectations of reciprocity and responsibility. I now recognize the ranking member, Brad Sherman, for his remarks.